We haven't talked about TV everywhere, which is this potentially transformative situation, perhaps more overseas, where you guys are doing a lot of work, than in the US, where things are kind of tightly controlled by the MSOs. Give us a little bit of an update about where this TV everywhere kind of evolution or trend stands, and some of the roadblocks and where it might be going.
Okay, well, first thing is it's not the MSOs or MVPDs, which is the current term for them, who are the heavies here. It's the networks. The MVPDs want to do it, have started to do it last year in 2011. They actually, Cablevision and Time Warner launched TV Everywhere iPad apps and were promptly sued by Viacom. And then they had to pull it back. Now, the networks, not necessarily the heavies, they do have a point. The networks are worried that they are losing ad revenue because Nielsen can't measure views on an iPad, on the train, or outside the home. So they're worried about that, and they want the MVPDs to pay them more money. They don't want to do that. So they're at an impasse, and they have sued them. And so where they've left it is, okay, you can watch it inside the house. In other words, you can watch it on an iPad so long as you're getting your internet signal from the cable, from the same person who's giving you your TV, and so long as you're doing it in your house. Now, that was going along, and then about 3 weeks ago, that got blown wide open. Why? Because by Dish. Now, Dish owns Slingbox. They've owned Slingbox for probably about 7 years at this point, but have not really done anything with it. Slingbox is a technology that allows you to watch your set-top box anywhere, and there's a little bit of a legal fumfer there where they get away with it because it's mirroring your set-top box. It's not actually a new broadcast. And when it was used by about 50 people, nobody ever worried, got too heavy into it. But Dish owns they have the hopper, which is sort of one finger in the eye of the networks, and then they stuck a second finger in because they said, okay, we're going to add Slingbox to the hopper, sell it as a Sling hopper. So now not only can Dish subscribers watch TV anywhere in the US, they can also watch it anywhere in the world because because it's not constrained by geo-restriction, you can watch it overseas. So now the thought is that the other MVPDs are going to try again, and they may not succeed. They may, they may get sued once again, but they're thinking, okay, we've got a little bit of momentum. We've got the fact that Dish is doing this. If we can get it out there, it's more, there's more people doing it, and maybe it'll be tough for them to push back against us and shut it down again because they'll look like the heavies. But nothing's happened right yet. Now, overseas, it's a little bit easier because you can have the setup of TV outside the US is very different. The MVPDs are national. The actual networks have much more power and much more going on. So there you're starting to see it happening, like with Sky in England, where Sky has set up sort of a virtual MVPD within the UK where you can actually get an internet-only subscription to Sky. And that sort of opened up TV everywhere in that sense. The flip of that is in a lot of places, like I know I was just in Australia recently, and in Australia a lot of people still watch TV over the air. Like they actually have antennas, and that's how they get their TV. And so it's tougher to get that to a TV everywhere platform because they're not paying for any kind of cable subscription.
So what about the opportunities for big publishers, to create their own delivery? And again, it's complicated, but obviously HBO, but what about programmers or cable networks that want to go direct? Is it possible in this country? Are they doing that? Will they?
Maybe, maybe not, because one of the things, okay, so let's use HBO as the easy example. There was a whole thing, gosh, about a year ago where, and people in Silicon Valley decided they would start up this, I want my HBO hashtag, I forget, it had a longer name to it, but essentially it's how much would you pay for HBO? And they were really pushing for HBO to start selling HBO Go a la carte to people who didn't have a cable subscription. And, and didn't understand why, and HBO's leaving money on the table, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they're not. HBO makes so much money right now selling through the cable, they sell it through the MVPDs who go around and collect their money for them. So, I mean, my assumption is that Netflix looks at them and says, gosh, we want to be you. We want, Netflix is going to start being integrated into the set-top box. Google in Kansas City has already started, has that technology that'll sort of flow down because, again, it's not that hard to do. And Time Warner competes with Google in Kansas City, so chances are they're going to do it. And once they do it, Comcast, et cetera, et cetera. So, but right now, Netflix has to chase down 22 million deadbeats and get $8 a month from them, whereas HBO has somebody do it for them. They get a big check from Time Warner and Fios and whatnot every month, and they don't have to have a customer service capacity to handle each of this. And my HBO is not working, and if something goes wrong, it's Comcast's fault. It's not their fault. And at some point, it will make sense for them to start selling. So they're selling it. HBO is selling it individually in Scandinavia, because they figure they've got about 40 people there who are actually getting HBO Go. It's not that big a deal, and they're testing it too. It's a way to test. Well, how would this work in a small market? And eventually, there will be a way for them to do it. But the flip of it, you always have to worry about the other side, the business side of it. How am I going to collect the money every month? How am I going to manage this? I've got to get, call center. I've got to get people to update my app all the time. So there's a lot of hassles inherent in it versus letting somebody else do it, getting that check every month, and also knowing that when the way they bundle everything together, you don't have to worry that someone's going to drop you, right? I mean, how many people have HBO because they wanted to watch Homeland, which is on Showtime, but most MVPDs make you get HBO and Showtime together as part of the Titanium bundle or whatever it is, and so you've got all these people giving money to HBO every month.
And one last question, Alan. How do you see the whole idea, in a related question about video on demand on a paid basis for stuff like that may be advertiser free? Is there going to be, it seems to me that apps, people are comfortable subscribing to apps, but in terms of what has been traditionally ad-supported premium content, is that going to continue to be ad-supported, or is there going to be some sort of a paid scenario emerging? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So there's two things going on there. One is you can see a world. I mean, it probably won't happen, but it's not within the it's not in the realm of impossible, where you have people who will pay a two-tier, basically class structure in television or video, where you have people who will pay to watch things without commercials, and then you will have people who will just get it with commercials. It's unlikely just because it involves a complete unbundling of everything that exists now and all. What you are seeing, which is more likely in that vein, is a lot of one-offs similar to Roku, and people like that are starting to do these pay-per-view events. So Roku just did this thing during the election. It was Jon Stewart and Bill O'Reilly, I think. It was called the Thriller from the Air-Conditioned Room, and it was sort of a pay into the Thriller in Manila and the fact that HBO years ago used to do these pay-per-view events or the cable, in the early days of cable. And we're starting to see that where there are companies, Redux is doing this, where they're getting acts that have their own following that will do the marketing for them, and for $4 or $5 we'll do a special, Louis C.K. or somebody like comedians, music acts, things like Jon Stewart, where they'll do these one-offs, and that can become very popular, and it's going to be delivered OTT. It's through a Roku or somebody, and as that becomes more popular, I think we are going to see more of that kind of stuff, where publishers can get a single event as opposed to a channel or a stream of things coming out, and that people will pay for it and be able to watch it on a TV rather than have to watch it on their laptop, because they'll use a Roku or whatever the next generation of that is.